Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Unity and watched the alien ships appear on his screens. He had waited 3 months for this moment. Humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. His heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his face calm. His crew needed to see confidence, not fear. "They're big," said Lieutenant Kate Sullivan from her station. She was his tactical officer and had been with him for 5 years. "3 times larger than our biggest ships," Jake nodded. The Velkari vessels gleamed like silver knives in the darkness of space. Arcturus Point Station hung between them, a neutral meeting ground built by another species decades ago. The station's lights blinked in the void, small and fragile compared to the warships surrounding it. "Send the greeting message again," Jake ordered. "Let them know we come in peace." Dr. Ben Carter, the ship's chief scientist, looked up from his console. His glasses reflected the blue light of his screens. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures I've never seen before. Their weapons could cut through our hull like paper." "Then let's hope they're here to talk, not shoot," Jake said. The response came quickly. A deep voice filled the bridge, translated by the station's computers. "Human vessel. This is Commander Zethus of the Velkari Imperial Fleet. You will dock at the station and present yourselves for evaluation." Kate frowned. "Evaluation? That doesn't sound friendly." "It's better than weapons fire," Jake replied. "Prepare to dock." The Unity moved slowly toward the station. Through the windows, Jake could see the Velkari ships holding position. They didn't move, didn't adjust their formation. They just waited like predators watching prey. Inside the station, the meeting room was cold. Jake walked in with Kate and Ben beside him. The Velkari were already there, 3 of them standing around a table. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and reflected no light. Commander Zethus didn't offer a greeting. He simply stared at the humans for a long moment, then made a sound that the translator called laughter. "These are the humans," Zethus said to his companions. "They barely made it to their own moon. Look at their clothing. Look at their ship, primitives." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "Commander Zethus, I am Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. We come seeking peaceful relations with the Velkari Empire." More laughter. The 3 Velkari looked at each other and made clicking sounds with their mouths. Zethus waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Peace," Zethus said. "You speak of peace as if you have a choice in the matter. The Velkari Empire spans 47 star systems. We rule 12 species. You are nothing but children playing with fire in your small corner of space." Ben stepped forward. "We may be new to interstellar travel, but we're not children. We've built a civilization that spans our solar system. We have colonies on Mars, bases on Europa and Titan. We've achieved things that—" "Silence," Zethus interrupted. "Your achievements mean nothing. Other species had cities on 100 worlds when we found them. They resisted. They fought. They all serve the Empire now." Kate's hand moved to her hip, where her weapon would have been if station rules allowed it. Jake saw the motion and shook his head slightly. "Not here, not now. What do you want from us?" Jake asked. Zethus walked around the table, his movements smooth and controlled. "Ambassador Nexus of the Velkari Council will arrive in 1 cycle to present Earth with our terms. You will submit to Imperial authority. You will provide resources and labor. You will give up your weapons and your independence. In return, the Empire will protect you and guide you to become useful members of our civilization. And if we refuse?" Jake said quietly. The laughter stopped. Zethus leaned forward, all 4 hands pressed against the table. His black eyes fixed on Jake. "If you refuse, we will educate you. We will burn your colonies. We will destroy your ships. We will show you what happens to those who defy the Empire. Then when enough of you have died, the survivors will beg to serve us." The room fell silent. Jake felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. Behind him, Ben's breathing had quickened. Kate stood perfectly still, her face showing nothing. "We need time to consider your offer," Jake said. "You have 30 standard cycles," Zethus replied. "Ambassador Nexus will return then for your answer. Choose wisely, human. The Empire is patient but not merciful." The meeting ended. Jake and his crew returned to the Unity in silence. As soon as the airlock sealed behind them, Kate exploded. "Did you hear them? Did you hear how they talk to us? Like we're insects." "I heard," Jake said. He moved to the bridge and sat in his command chair. "Ben, send everything we recorded back to Earth, every word, every scan of their ships, everything." "Already done," Ben said. "They're going to lose their minds back home." Jake stared at the view screen. The Velkari ships were moving away now, confident and casual. They didn't even bother to watch the Unity. Humanity wasn't worth their attention. "Captain," Kate said softly, "what are we going to do?" "We're going home," Jake said. "And we're going to tell them the truth. There's an empire out there that thinks we're weak, that thinks we'll roll over and give up everything we've built. Will we fight them?" Ben asked. "Captain, you saw their ships. Their weapons. We can't win against that." Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea what was coming. He thought about his niece, Sally, who was 8 years old and wanted to be an astronaut. He thought about all the people who had died to build humanity's presence in space. "I don't know if we can win," Jake admitted, "but I know we won't surrender without trying. Not to them, not to anyone." The Unity turned away from Arcturus Point and began the long journey home. Behind them, the Velkari ships disappeared into the darkness, already moving to their next conquest. They had delivered their message and expected humanity to accept its fate. They were wrong. Back on Earth, President Linda Hayes received Jake's transmission in the middle of the night. She watched the recording 3 times, her face growing harder with each viewing. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. "Wake up the Defense Council," she said. "All of them. We have a situation." Within an hour, the most powerful military and civilian leaders on Earth gathered in the secure bunker beneath the Capitol. Admiral Christopher Blake arrived first, still in his sleeping clothes. General Martin Cole came next, his uniform hastily thrown on. President Hayes didn't waste time with pleasantries. She played the recording. When Zethus's voice filled the room, promising destruction and slavery, something changed in the faces around the table. The sleepiness vanished. The casual attitudes disappeared. By the time the recording ended, every person in that room understood what was coming. "How many ships do we have?" President Hayes asked. Admiral Blake cleared his throat. 40 warships. Another 100 support vessels. Against their reported 800, we're vastly outnumbered. "Then we build more," said General Cole. "In 30 days? Impossible." "Not 30 days, Cole said. He stood up and walked to the display screen. "We don't fight them in 30 days. We use those 30 days to prepare. We evacuate non-essential personnel from the outer colonies. We position our forces. We get ready." "Ready for what?" someone asked. "To die bravely?" General Cole smiled, and there was nothing friendly in that smile. "Ready to show them they picked the wrong species to threaten." President Hayes looked around the table. "We need a vote. Do we submit to the Velkari Empire or do we fight?" The vote was quick. Every hand rose for war. "Then God help us all," President Hayes said quietly. "Because in 30 days we're going to find out if humanity is as tough as we think we are." The Velkari Third Conquest Fleet arrived at humanity's outer colonies like a storm. War Master Krenthus commanded 120 warships, each one a masterpiece of destruction. He had conquered 6 species in his career. Humans would be the 7th. The mining station on Titan never stood a chance. Its defensive guns fired desperately, but the Velkari shields absorbed every shot. Then the station exploded, torn apart by weapons that turned metal into vapor. 3,000 people died in seconds. Krenthus watched the destruction from his command ship and felt satisfied. "Broadcast this," he ordered. "Let every human see what resistance brings." The message spread across human space. Europa Base saw it. The Mars colonies saw it. Earth saw it. The images showed Titan burning, debris spinning through space where homes and families had been. On Mars, Colonel Richard Hayes received evacuation orders. He stood in the command center and looked at his staff. "We have 6 hours to get everyone off this planet. Every civilian, every soldier, everyone." Captain Laura Bennett, his second officer, pulled up the transport schedules. "Sir, we have 40 ships available. The colony has 15,000 people. We can't get them all out in 6 hours. Then we use cargo ships, mining haulers. Anything that flies," Richard said. "I'm not leaving anyone behind." The evacuation began. People rushed to the landing pads with whatever they could carry. Children cried. Parents tried to stay calm. The soldiers kept order, but barely. Everyone had seen what happened to Titan. Laura coordinated the loading. "Pack them in tight. Forget about comfort. We just need them alive." The last ship lifted off as Velkari scouts entered Mars orbit. Richard watched from the final transport as the colony fell away beneath him. Everything humanity had built there over 40 years, abandoned in hours. "They'll destroy it all," Laura said quietly. Let them, Richard replied. Buildings can be replaced. People can't. The Velkari did destroy it. They bombarded the empty colonies from orbit, turning habitats into craters. They broadcast those images too, showing the galaxy that humanity was running, fleeing like animals. But on Earth, Admiral Blake watched those broadcasts and smiled. They're taking the bait, he said to his staff. They think we're weak. Commander Nicole Parker stood beside him. She was young, only 28, but she led the experimental fighter squadron. Admiral, the prototype ships are ready. We can start hitting their supply lines. Not yet, Blake said. Let them come deeper into our space. Let them get comfortable. Nicole didn't like waiting, but she trusted Blake. The man had been fighting battles before she was born. If he said wait, she would wait. In a secret facility beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Ben Carter worked on something that would change everything. He called it Project Red Sky, though only a dozen people knew that name. The theory is simple, Ben explained to the engineers gathered around him. The Velkari shields work by creating an energy barrier. But every barrier has two sides. What if we could reverse the flow? Engineer Peter Ross looked at the equations on the screen. You want to turn their shields into weapons against them? Exactly. Every shot they fire would feed back into their own systems. Their shields would kill them. That's brilliant, Peter said. Can we build it? We have to, Ben replied. Because if we can't, Earth dies. The work continued day and night. Scientists who hadn't slept in 40 hours kept pushing. They knew what failure meant. Above them, the Velkari fleet moved closer to Earth. They destroyed the asteroid mining operations. They wiped out the research stations. Every outpost fell without much fight. The humans ran every time. War Master Krenthis grew bored. This is not a conquest. This is pest control. The humans have no courage. His second officer, Vice Commander Threxus, was less certain. Master, they evacuated before we arrived. They knew we were coming. Perhaps this is strategy, not cowardice. Strategy? Krenthis laughed. What strategy is there in running? No, Threxus. The humans are simply weak. Soon we will reach their home world, and they will beg for mercy. But someone else was watching the Velkari advance with different eyes. Jake Morrison had returned to Earth and now worked directly with the Defense Council. He studied every battle, every scan his ship had taken of Velkari technology. Kate Sullivan worked beside him, analyzing tactical data. They always attack from the same formation. 3 ships forward, rest and support. They never change it. Why would they? Jake said. It's worked for them for 300 years. Every species they've fought either surrendered fast or got crushed. So, we give them something they haven't seen before. That's the plan. Nicole Parker's squadron launched its first mission 3 weeks after Titan fell. 6 experimental fighters, small and fast, jumped into Velkari space near a supply convoy. The Velkari escorts barely registered them on sensors before the attack began. Nicole's weapons weren't like standard human guns. They phased through shields, hitting the ship's hulls directly. The convoy exploded. Break and scatter, Nicole ordered. Don't let them track us. The fighters disappeared before Velkari reinforcements arrived. The enemy found only wreckage and confusion. Krenthis received the report and threw it aside. A lucky strike, meaningless, but it happened again. And again. Over 2 weeks, Nicole's squadron destroyed 15 Velkari supply ships. The enemy started pulling escorts from the main fleet to protect their convoys. Admiral Blake watched the fleet movements and nodded. Good, spread them out. Make them worried. The main Velkari fleet reached Earth's solar system 4 weeks after the ultimatum expired. Krenthis expected to find a broken, desperate defense. Instead, he found every human warship waiting in formation above Earth, all 40 ships. Admiral Blake's flagship Vanguard sat in the center. The ships weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were ready to fight. Krenthis studied the formation with surprise. They mean to resist. How foolish. Threxus counted the human vessels, 40 ships against our 120. But Master, look at their positioning. They're not arranged for defense. This formation is offensive. Offensive? Krenthis laughed again. With what weapons? We've seen their technology. It's primitive. On Earth's surface, General Cole activated every hidden weapon system humanity had built. Missile silos opened across every continent. Railgun batteries on the moon came online. Satellites that looked like communications equipment revealed themselves as weapons platforms. Jake Morrison's ship, Unity, took position behind the main fleet. His job was dangerous and simple. Feed false information to the Valkyrie, make Earth's defenses look weaker than they were. Transmitting now, Jake said. His crew sent carefully crafted data to the Valkyrie fleet. Numbers that suggested Earth's shields were failing. Energy readings that implied the human ships were low on power. Krenthis saw the data and smiled. They're already breaking. All ships begin the assault. Destroy the orbital defense first, then we'll burn their cities until they surrender. The Valkyrie fleet moved forward. On Vanguard's bridge, Admiral Blake watched them come.
Kate Sullivan stood at tactical, her hands steady on the controls.
Around them, the crew waited in silence. How long until they're in range? Blake asked. 2 minutes, Kate replied. Good. Blake opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Blake. We've spent 4 weeks running from these people. We've let them think we're weak. We've let them think we're beaten. Now we show them the truth. Now we show them that humanity doesn't surrender. All ships weapons free. Make every shot count. The human fleet didn't wait for the Valkyrie to fire first. 40 ships opened up at once, their railguns sending slugs of metal at incredible speed. The Valkyrie shields held, but barely. The enemy ships rocked under the impact. Krenthis grabbed his command chair as his flagship shook. Return fire. All weapons! The space between the fleets filled with light and death. Valkyrie plasma beams struck human shields. Human missiles exploded against alien armor. Ships on both sides took damage. But the humans fought differently than any species the Valkyrie had faced. When a human ship took critical damage, it didn't retreat. It accelerated forward, ramming into the nearest Valkyrie vessel with its reactor set to explode. The first kamikaze attack destroyed a Valkyrie cruiser and 2 escorts. The explosion lit up the void like a small sun. They're insane, Threxus shouted. They're ramming us. 2 more human ships followed. Then a third. The Valkyrie formation broke as captains tried to avoid the suicide attacks. Krenthis felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Reform the line. Don't let them scatter us. But it was too late. The human fleet surged forward, and behind them, Earth's ground weapons opened fire. Railgun slugs crossed the distance in seconds. Missiles by the thousands rose from the planet. The sky above Earth turned bright with weapons fire. And in that moment, Dr. Ben Carter activated Project Red Sky. The satellites hidden throughout the solar system pulsed with energy. Quantum entanglement waves spread across space, invisible but deadly. They touched the Valkyrie shields and made them reverse. War Master Krenthis fired his weapons at the human flagship. The plasma beam left his ship, struck his own shields, and bounced back. The beam tore through his command deck, killing half his bridge crew instantly. Across the Valkyrie fleet, the same thing happened. Every shot they fired became a weapon against themselves. Ships exploded from their own guns. The confusion turned to panic. Shields down. All ships, shields down, Krenthis ordered. War Master Krenthis tried to restore order to his fleet, but chaos had already won. His ships scattered in every direction, each captain trying to survive. Some raised their shields again, forgetting that doing so would kill them. Others kept shields down and died to human weapons. There was no good choice. Admiral Blake pressed the attack. All ships focus fire on their command vessels. Take out their leadership. The human fleet, battered and bleeding, pushed forward. Vanguard took a direct hit that tore through its port side. 50 crew members died instantly. The ship shook so hard that Blake had to grab his chair to stay standing. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Kate Sullivan reported. Her voice stayed steady, even as sparks flew from damaged consoles around her. Fire suppression not responding. Seal those decks, Blake ordered. Keep us in the fight. Another human ship, the destroyer Defender, broke apart under sustained fire. Its captain, Commander Greg Patterson, had just enough time to send one message. We choose when we fight. Then his ship exploded, taking 2 Valkyrie escorts with it. On the lunar surface, the railgun batteries fired without stopping. Each shot used so much power that entire cities went dark for seconds. But the crews didn't care about power bills. They cared about killing the enemy. Peter Ross monitored the Red Sky satellites from his control station. Dr. Carter, we're getting feedback in the system. The Valkyrie are trying to adapt. Ben Carter looked at his screens and saw the problem. The enemy was rotating shield frequencies, trying to find one that wouldn't reverse. They're learning faster than I expected. We have maybe 10 more minutes before they figure out a counter. Then we use those 10 minutes, Ben said grimly. He pushed the satellites to maximum output. The quantum waves intensified. More Velkari ships found their shields turning deadly. A capital ship fired its main cannon at Earth and watched the beam bounce back, cutting the ship in half. Krenthis saw his fleet dying and made a decision. All ships emergency jump to hyperspace. Retreat from this system. But the humans had planned for retreat too. Jake Morrison's ship Unity had been broadcasting false data throughout the battle. Now it broadcast something real, a hyperspace disruption field. Small devices scattered throughout the solar system over the past month activated at once. The Velkari ships tried to jump. Their engines engaged, but nothing happened. They were trapped. Impossible, Krenthis shouted. Humans don't have this technology. Threxus worked frantically at his console. Master, they've blocked hyperspace in a sphere around the entire solar system. We can't leave. Then we break through their fleet and run at sublight speed. That will take weeks. They'll hunt us down. Better that than dying here. The remaining Velkari ships, now only 67 of the original 120, turned away from Earth and tried to run. But they were deep in the solar system, surrounded by human forces. Nicole Parker's squadron intercepted them near Mars. Her 6 fighters against 67 warships should have been suicide, but she had advantages. Her ships were small and fast. Her weapons phased through armor, and she had nothing to lose. Split up, she ordered. Hit the engines, slow them down. Dan Foster took his fighter into a dive that would have killed a normal pilot. The G-forces made his vision narrow, but he held course. His weapon struck a Velkari cruiser's engine pods. The ship shuddered and slowed. Amy Chen followed with her own attack. Then the other pilots. 6 fighters buzzing around the Velkari fleet like angry wasps, stinging and darting away. Krenthis tried to swat them, but every time he focused weapons on the fighters, the human main fleet got closer. He was being herded back toward Earth. General Cole launched the ground-to-space missiles. Thousands of them, rising from every continent. They weren't advanced weapons. They were simple rockets with explosive warheads. But there were so many of them that the Velkari point defense systems couldn't stop them all. The missiles struck home. Velkari ships disappeared in fireballs. Debris spread across the orbital lanes like deadly snow. On Vanguard, Blake watched his tactical display. The human fleet was down to 23 operational ships. Most of those were damaged. His own flagship was barely holding together. But the Velkari were broken. All ships, final push, Blake ordered. Don't give them time to think. The human fleet charged forward one last time. Ships that could barely fly. Crews that had fought for 6 hours without rest. Weapons that were overheating and failing. They charged anyway. The Velkari line collapsed. Some ships surrendered, broadcasting their yield on all frequencies. Others tried to fight to the end and died for it. Krenthis's flagship, massive and proud, took railgun hits from 3 human ships at once. The command deck where Krenthis stood erupted in flame. His last thought was disbelief. Humans weren't supposed to win. They were primitive. They were weak, but they had won anyway. The battle ended as the sun rose over Europe. People who had huddled in shelters all night emerged to see the sky. It was red, not from sunrise, but from the burning remains of Velkari ships entering the atmosphere. Streaks of fire crossed the sky in every direction. Children pointed at the lights. Adults stood in silence, trying to understand what they were seeing. This was victory. This was survival. This was humanity proving it could stand against the galaxy. In space, Admiral Blake sat in his command chair and tried to catch his breath. The bridge of Vanguard looked like a war zone. Half the stations were destroyed. Bodies lay under emergency tarps. Kate Sullivan had a bandage wrapped around her head, blood seeping through. Damage report, Blake said quietly. Kate checked her console with shaking hands. Vanguard is at 30% combat effectiveness. Weapons offline. Main reactor fluctuating. We're held together by luck and prayer. The fleet? 23 ships survived. Most are in similar condition. We lost 17 ships completely. Casualty count is still coming in, but early estimates are around 47,000 dead. Blake closed his eyes. 47,000 people. 47,000 families who would get terrible news in the coming days. The price of freedom was always paid in blood, and the enemy, Velkari ships surrendered. The rest are destroyed or disabled. We're picking up escape pods. War Master Krenthis is confirmed dead. Blake opened his eyes. Get me a channel to Earth. The President needs to know it's over. President Linda Hayes took the call in the Situation Room beneath the Capitol. She had been there for 18 hours, watching the battle unfold through satellite feeds. When Blake's face appeared on the screen, she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "Madam President," Blake said, "Earth is secure. The Velkari fleet is destroyed." Hayes felt something break inside her. Not weakness, but release. The weight she had carried for weeks finally lifted. "Casualties?" "Heavy, but we're still here. We're still free." Hayes nodded. She looked at the people around her. General Cole, who had planned the ground defense. Richard Hayes, who had evacuated Mars. Laura Bennett, who had coordinated logistics. All of them looked like they had aged years in one night. "Tell your people they saved the world," Hayes said to Blake. "Tell them humanity is proud of them." "I will, ma'am." The channel closed. Hayes turned to her staff. "We need to address the nation. The planet. Everyone needs to know what happened here." 2 hours later, she stood before cameras and spoke to 8 billion people. Her voice was tired but strong. "My fellow humans, today we faced an enemy that thought we were weak. They demanded our surrender. They threatened to destroy us if we refused. We did refuse. And in the battle that followed, we showed the galaxy who we are." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We lost 47,000 brave souls today, soldiers and civilians, people who chose to fight rather than live as slaves. We will never forget them. We will honor their sacrifice by remaining free, by staying strong, by showing the universe that humanity does not bow to tyrants." Across Earth, people watched. In the ruins of Mars, colonists watched. On the Moon, exhausted gunner crews watched. Throughout human space, everyone watched. The Velkari Empire thought they could conquer us in a day. Instead, they learned what it means to face humanity. We don't fight because we're the strongest. We fight because we refuse to accept defeat. We fight because freedom matters more than safety. We fight because that's who we are. Hayes looked directly into the camera. This war may not be over. The Empire may send more ships, but they'll face the same result. Because today we proved something important. We proved that humans don't surrender. We proved that our small blue planet can stand against an empire. And we proved that underestimating us is a fatal mistake. The broadcast ended. But across the galaxy, other species watched it too. The Velkari had broadcast humanity's early defeats, but they couldn't hide this final battle. Every species that the Empire had conquered, every slave world, every oppressed population saw the same thing. A primitive species had defeated the Velkari. If humans could do it, maybe others could too. On the world of Praxis, a slave worker named Thorvin watched the broadcast in a hidden room. Around him, other rebels gathered. They had been planning resistance for years, but never had the courage to act. The Empire seemed too strong, but humans had been weaker. Humans had fewer ships, less technology, no experience with Galactic War, and humans had won. "Get a message to Earth," Thorvin said to his communications officer. "Tell them we want to learn how they did it." Similar messages came from 6 other worlds. The Velkari Empire, which had ruled unopposed for 300 years, suddenly faced something new, not just one rebellion, but the threat of many. On Earth, Jake Morrison sat in a medical bay getting his injuries treated. Kate Sullivan was in the bed next to him, unconscious but stable. Through the window, he could see the red sky fading to normal blue as the last debris burned away. His niece Sally would be safe now. She could still dream of being an astronaut. That's what they had fought for. That's what 47,000 people had died for. Nicole Parker found him there an hour later. Her flight suit was torn and burned. Her face was covered in soot, but she was smiling. "We did it," she said simply. "We did," Jake agreed. "Now comes the hard part." "Harder than that battle?" "Maybe. Because now we have to decide what kind of people we want to be. Do we just defend ourselves, or do we help others fight for their freedom too?" Nicole sat down, wincing from her injuries. "I know what those people on Praxis and the other worlds are hoping for." "So do I," Jake said. "The question is, are we ready to fight a war across the galaxy?" Neither of them had an answer yet, but they knew that choice was coming. Humanity had won one battle. Now they had to decide what to do with that victory. The Velkari Council met in emergency session on their homeworld. High Counselor Vraxis stood before the assembled leadership and tried to explain how 120 warships had been destroyed by a primitive species. The humans used unknown technology, Vraxis said. They reversed our shields. They trapped us in normal space. They fought with a ferocity we have never encountered. "Excuses," another counselor said. "Krenthis was a fool. He underestimated them. Perhaps. But the problem remains. 6 of our subject worlds are now in open rebellion. They saw the humans win, and now they think they can win too. The council chamber filled with angry voices. The Velkari Empire was built on fear and superiority. If subject species stopped fearing them, everything collapsed. We crush the rebellions, one counselor said. We make examples of the rebel worlds. We burn their cities and broadcast it across the empire. And what about Earth? Praxis asked. Do we leave them unchallenged? Do we allow a human victory to stand? We gather our full fleet. All 600 remaining ships. We attack Earth with overwhelming force. Praxis nodded slowly. That will take 6 months to organize. 6 months where the rebellions grow stronger. 6 months where humanity prepares for us. Then we move faster. 3 months. Agreed. In 3 months we end humanity. We destroy Earth so completely that every species in the galaxy remembers what happens to those who defy us. On Earth, the cleanup continued. Debris from the battle filled low orbit, making space travel dangerous. Crews worked around the clock to clear the worst of it. Salvage ships collected pieces of Velkari technology for study. Admiral Blake recovered from his injuries in a military hospital. Doctors said he should have died when Vanguard took that direct hit. Instead, he had a broken arm, cracked ribs, and determination to keep fighting. President Hayes visited him there. She sat by his bed and spoke quietly. The other species are reaching out to us. Praxis, Therax, 6 others. They want weapons. They want training. They want us to help them fight. Blake adjusted his position, wincing at the pain. What did you tell them? Nothing yet. That's why I'm here. What should we tell them? That depends on what we want to be, Blake said. Do we want to be Earth, isolated and defensive? Or do we want to be part of something bigger? General Cole thinks we should help them. He says if we don't, the Velkari will crush the rebellions and come back stronger. Cole is right. But helping them means committing to a war that might last years. It means sending our people to die on worlds we've never seen, for species we just met. Hayes looked out the window at the red-tinged sky. We lost 47,000 people defending our home. How many will we lose fighting for others? More, Blake admitted. But if we win, we change the galaxy. We end the Velkari Empire. We give freedom to millions of people. And if we lose, then Earth dies anyway. The Velkari won't forget what we did. They'll come back, and next time they'll bring everything they have. Hayes stood up. The council votes tomorrow. I need to know, Admiral. If we commit to this war, can we win? Blake was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at her with clear eyes. I don't know if we can win, but I know we have to try. The vote passed with 87% support. Earth would help the rebellions. It would share technology, provide training, and if necessary, fight alongside the rebel species. Jake Morrison volunteered to lead the diplomatic missions. His ship, Unity, was repaired and upgraded with salvaged Velkari technology. Kate Sullivan joined him as his second-in-command. Together they would travel to the rebel worlds and build an alliance. Before they left, Jake visited the memorial being built for the fallen. 47,000 names carved into black stone. He found the section for Unity's crew members who had died in the battle. Young people who had believed in peace and ended up fighting a war. I'm sorry, he whispered to them. I'm sorry it came to this, but he wasn't sorry for fighting. None of them were. On Praxis, Thorvin gathered his rebel forces in secret. His species, the Praxians, had been slaves to the Velkari for 80 years. 3 generations had known nothing but servitude. But Thorvin remembered his grandmother's stories of freedom. When Unity arrived in orbit, Thorvin personally went up to meet the humans. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and large eyes adapted for his planet's dim sun. Jake and Kate greeted him aboard their ship. Captain Morrison, Thorvin said in translated speech, your victory has given us hope. Will you help us fight? Jake studied the alien leader. He saw desperation there, but also strength. We'll help. But you need to understand something. This won't be easy. The Velkari will fight hard to keep you enslaved. We understand. We watched your battle. We saw how many humans died. We're prepared to pay the same price. Kate pulled up tactical displays of Praxis. Your planet has 40 Velkari garrison ships in orbit. Another 10,000 soldiers on the ground. How many fighters do you have? 8,000 rebels. Most have basic weapons. Some have captured Velkari equipment. That's not enough, Kate said bluntly. I know. That's why we need you. Jake looked at the tactical display. 40 ships. Even with Unity's upgrades, one ship couldn't defeat 40. But maybe one ship didn't have to. We need 3 days, Jake said. Can you keep your people hidden for 3 days? Yes, what will you do? We're going to teach the Velkari the same lesson they taught us. That underestimating your enemy is fatal. Unity left orbit and jumped to hyperspace. Jake sent a message back to Earth. Need reinforcements at Praxis. Bring everything. Dr. Ben Carter received the message in his lab. He was working on the next generation of Red Sky technology. Peter Ross stood beside him reviewing the designs. Jake needs help, Ben said. They want to liberate Praxis. Can we build enough Red Sky satellites in 3 days? Peter asked. No, but we can build something else. Ben pulled up new designs on his screen. I've been working on a portable version. Small units that can be carried by fighters. They don't have the range of satellites, but they can reverse shields at close range. How many can we build? If we push every factory? Maybe 50 units, and that's not many. It's enough, Ben said. Send a message to General Cole. Tell him we're going to Praxis. 3 days later, 10 human ships emerged from hyperspace near Praxis. Not a large fleet, but enough. Each ship carried the portable Red Sky units and weapons to arm the rebels. Colonel Richard Hayes commanded the mission. Laura Bennett served as his tactical officer. They had volunteered for this, knowing it might be a one-way trip. On the surface, Thorvin received the weapon shipments. Human soldiers taught his rebels how to use them. The training was rushed basic, but better than nothing. When the Velkari ships dropped their shields, hit them hard, a human sergeant explained. Don't hesitate. They won't give you a second chance. The Praxian rebels listened and learned. Many of them were young, teenagers who had grown up in chains. Now they held weapons and hope. The attack began at dawn. Richard's fleet engaged the Velkari garrison in orbit. The enemy ships responded with confidence, expecting an easy victory. They had 40 ships against 10, but the portable Red Sky units changed everything. Human fighters swooped in close, activated the devices, and watched Velkari shields reverse. The garrison ships fired at the human fleet and killed themselves instead. On the ground, Thorvin's rebels attacked the Velkari barracks. The fighting was brutal and close. Praxians died in the first minutes, cut down by superior weapons. But they kept coming, kept fighting. A young rebel named Saris threw himself at a Velkari soldier, sacrificing his life to let his friends advance. Another rebel, Mira, lost her arm to a plasma blast but kept firing with her remaining hand. The Velkari had better weapons and better training. But the Praxians had something stronger. They were fighting for their home. By nightfall, Praxis was free. Half the Velkari garrison was destroyed. The rest surrendered. On the ground, 3,000 rebels had died. But 8 million Praxians were no longer slaves. Thorvin stood in the ruins of the garrison headquarters and looked at the human soldiers who had fought beside his people. Thank you, he said simply. Richard shook his hand. Thank us by staying free. The Velkari will try to take this planet back. Let them try. We know how to fight now. News of Praxis spread across the Velkari Empire. 2 more worlds rose in rebellion. Then 3 more. The empire that had seemed unbreakable was cracking. On Earth, Nicole Parker was promoted to commander and given a new mission. She would lead training for rebel pilots across 6 worlds. Dan Foster and Amy Chen would help her. Teaching aliens to fly, Dan said with a tired smile. Not what I expected when I joined the military. Nothing about this war is what we expected, Nicole replied. But we adapt. That's what humans do. President Hayes addressed the growing coalition. Representatives from 8 species gathered in a conference room on Earth. Some were humanoid, others were radically different. But all of them had one thing in common. They wanted freedom. The Velkari Empire has ruled for 300 years, Hayes said. They've conquered and enslaved millions. They thought their power was eternal, but we've shown them the truth. Empires built on fear and oppression always fall. It just takes someone brave enough to push. Earth pushed first, Thorvin said. We followed. What happens now? Now we build something better, Hayes replied. Not another empire. Not another hierarchy of masters and servants. We build an alliance of equals. A coalition where every species has a voice. The Velkari fleet gathered at their homeworld like a storm preparing to break. 600 warships, the entire military might of the empire, filled the space around Velkari's prime. High Counselor Vraxis stood aboard the command dreadnought and watched his fleet assemble. This is the largest fleet ever gathered, his aide said. The humans cannot stand against this. Vraxis was less certain. He had watched the recordings of Earth's defense. He had seen how humans fought. They didn't follow the normal rules of war. They sacrificed themselves. They used their weaknesses as weapons. Underestimating them cost us Krenthus and 120 ships, Vraxis said. We won't make that mistake again. We hit them with everything at once, no mercy, no hesitation. The Velkari fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for Earth. Their plan was simple. Destroy the human homeworld so completely that every species in the galaxy would remember the price of rebellion. But intelligence traveled fast in the coalition. Before the Velkari fleet reached halfway, Earth knew they were coming. General Richard Hayes commanded the coalition fleet from his new flagship, Liberator. Around him, 400 ships from 15 different species waited in formation. Human ships mixed with Praxian cruisers, Theraxian carriers, and vessels from a dozen freed worlds. They outnumber us, Laura Bennett said quietly. 600 against 400. But we have surprise, Richard replied. They're expecting to find us defending Earth. Instead, we're going to meet them here at Velkari's Prime. The coalition had voted for this strategy. Instead of waiting for the Velkari to attack, they would strike at the heart of the Empire. It was risky. It was dangerous. But it gave them the initiative. Admiral Blake watched from Earth where he coordinated the reserve forces. His injuries kept him from commanding in the field, but his mind was still sharp. They'll be spread out for the jump, he told Richard over the comm. Hit them before they can reform. That's the plan, Richard confirmed. The coalition fleet positioned itself in the outer system of Velkari's Prime. They waited in silence, weapons powered down, hiding among the debris and asteroids. Nicole Parker's fighter squadron floated in the shadow of a dead moon. How long? Dan Foster asked over the squadron channel. Soon, Nicole replied. Stay focused. The Velkari fleet emerged from hyperspace in waves. First the scouts, then the main battle groups, finally the command ships. They spread out across the system, powerful and confident. Then the coalition attacked. 400 ships lit their engines and weapons at once. The Velkari scouts died before they could send a warning. The main fleet turned to face the threat, but they were scattered and unprepared. Richard's voice filled the coalition comm channels. All ships weapons free. For your homes. For your freedom. For the future. The Battle of Velkari's Prime began with fire and fury. Coalition ships charged into the Velkari formation, their weapons blazing. Human railguns fired alongside Praxian plasma cannons. Theraxian missiles mixed with Velkari return fire. Dr. Ben Carter's newest Red Sky system activated. Satellites hidden around the system for the past month pulsed with energy. But the Velkari had learned from their defeat at Earth. They had modified their shields to resist the reversal effect. It's not working, Peter Ross reported from his monitoring station on Earth. They adapted. Then we used Plan B, Ben said calmly. He activated the secondary function of the Red Sky satellites. Instead of reversing shields, they overloaded them. The Velkari shields didn't turn deadly, but they failed completely. Suddenly, 600 Velkari ships were naked in space. Now, Richard ordered. Hit them now. The coalition fleet concentrated fire on the exposed Velkari ships. 3 capital ships exploded in the first minute. 5 more followed. The Velkari tried to restore their shields, but the Red Sky satellites kept disrupting them. High Counselor Vraxis felt panic rising. His fleet was supposed to be invincible. Instead, it was being torn apart by species he had considered inferior. All ships focus fire on those satellites, he ordered. Destroy the human technology. But the satellites were small and scattered. The Velkari wasted precious time hunting them, while the coalition fleet pressed the attack. Nicole Parker led her fighter squadron into the chaos. Her target was the Velkari command ship, the massive dreadnought where Vraxis directed the battle. She dodged through weapons fire, her hands steady on the controls. I'm hit, Amy Chen called out. Her fighter trailed smoke, systems failing. I can't maintain speed. Get to safety, Nicole ordered. Negative. I'm still armed. I'm still in the fight. Amy's fighter, barely holding together, continued forward. She fired her last missiles at a Velkari cruiser and watched them impact. Then her ship came apart, torn by enemy fire. She died with her finger on the trigger. Dan Foster saw his wingmate die and felt rage burn through him. He pushed his fighter harder, faster, diving through enemy formations. His weapons carved through Velkari armor. On the capital ships, the battle was just as fierce. Colonel Laura Bennett coordinated the coalition's attack patterns, keeping the ships working as one unit. When a Praxian cruiser took heavy damage, she sent 2 human frigates to cover its retreat. "We're stronger together," she muttered. That had become the coalition's motto. Jake Morrison fought from unity, now armed with the best weapons humanity could build. Kate Sullivan managed the tactical board beside him, calling out targets and threats. "Valkyrie reinforcements from the inner system," Kate reported. 50 ships estimated arrival in 10 minutes. "Can we hold until then?" Jake asked. "We have to." The coalition fleet was taking heavy casualties. Ships broke apart under sustained fire. Escape pods dotted space as crews abandoned dying vessels. But nobody retreated. Every species, every crew, every pilot knew what was at stake. The Thoraxian carrier Glory burned from a dozen wounds but kept launching fighters. Its captain, an old warrior named Kethris, refused evacuation orders. "My ship dies when I die, not before." A Praxian dreadnought rammed a Valkyrie battleship, both ships exploding in a fireball that lit up the system. The sacrifice opened a gap in the Valkyrie line that coalition ships poured through. On Earth, President Hayes watched the battle feed with her entire cabinet. The numbers were bad. The coalition was losing ships faster than the Valkyrie. But they were winning where it mattered. "The Valkyrie formation is breaking," General Cole reported. "They're fighting as individuals now, not as a fleet." "That's the difference," Admiral Blake said from his hospital bed. "We fight together. They fight for themselves." On the battlefield, High Counselor Vraxis saw his perfect formation collapse into chaos. Ships fled in different directions. Captains ignored his orders. The discipline that had made the Valkyrie invincible was gone. "We're losing," his aide said in disbelief. Vraxis wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. The truth was obvious in the burning wrecks surrounding his command ship. The coalition was destroying the Empire. Colonel Laura Bennett identified the command ship and sent the coordinates to Richard. "That's the target. Take it down." Richard directed every available ship toward the Valkyrie dreadnought. Human cruisers fired railguns. Praxian ships launched plasma torpedoes. A wave of destruction converged on Vraxis's position. The Valkyrie commander saw it coming. He tried to order an emergency jump, but the red sky satellites still disrupted his engines. He was trapped watching death approach. "For the Empire," he said quietly. Then his ship broke apart, torn into pieces by concentrated fire. High Counselor Vraxis died with his Empire. The Valkyrie fleet saw their leader's ship explode and something broke inside them. Some ships surrendered immediately. Others tried to flee. A few fought on to the bitter end, but their defeat was certain. Nicole Parker's squadron, reduced to 3 fighters after the brutal combat, pursued the fleeing ships. But Richard called them back. "Let them go," he ordered. "The battle is won." Nicole turned her fighter around, heading back to liberate her. She was exhausted, wounded, and running on fumes, but she had survived. Not all of her squadron had. The final count came in slowly. Of 400 coalition ships, 247 survived. Of 600 Valkyrie ships, fewer than 100 escaped. The rest were destroyed, captured, or surrendered. The Valkyrie Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 300 years, fell in a single battle. On Earth, people poured into the streets in celebration. They had won, not just survival, but freedom for an entire region of space. The celebrations lasted for days. Jake Morrison stood on the Bridge of Unity and looked at the system around him. Debris filled the space, testament to the cost of victory. Thousands of people from a dozen species had died here, but their sacrifice meant something. "What happens now?" Kate Sullivan asked. "Now we build something better," Jake replied. The Treaty of Arcturus Point was signed 6 months later. Representatives from 89 species gathered at the same station where humanity had first met the Valkyrie. But this time they gathered as equals. President Hayes spoke at the ceremony. The Valkyrie Empire thought that strength meant domination. They were wrong. True strength comes from working together, from respecting each other, from choosing freedom over fear. The Galactic Coalition was born that day, not an empire but an alliance. Every member had equal voice. Every species contributed according to its abilities. Admiral Blake retired from active service but became the Coalition's first military advisor. He trained the next generation of officers, teaching them the lessons Earth had learned. Nicole Parker took a position as flight instructor. She taught young pilots from across the coalition, passing on the skills that had won the war. On her wall, she kept a picture of Amy Chen and the other pilots who hadn't made it home. They made this possible, she told her students. Never forget that. General Richard Hayes became Supreme Commander of the Coalition Defense Force. Laura Bennett served as his second. Together they built a military that protected without conquering. Dr. Ben Carter continued his research, but shifted focus from weapons to technology that improved lives. Peter Ross worked with him, developing faster ships, better communications, and medical advances. Jake Morrison and Kate Sullivan traveled the coalition as ambassadors, helping new species join and resolving disputes. They became known as the people who could solve any problem. 10 years after the war, the coalition had grown to include 127 species. Trade flourished. Science advanced. Peace, while never perfect, held. On Earth, children learned about the war in school. They studied the battles, the sacrifices, the moment when humanity faced extinction and chose to fight. Sally Morrison, now 18, prepared to enter the Coalition Naval Academy. Her Uncle Jake's example had inspired her. The memorial to the fallen grew larger each year. Not just human names, but Praxians, Thraxians, and dozens of other species, all of them who had died fighting for freedom. A new tradition emerged. On the anniversary of the Battle of Earth, the Coalition observed a moment of silence. Then someone would read the message that Commander Greg Patterson had sent before his ship exploded. "We choose when we fight." Those words became the Coalition's creed. Not aggressive, but not passive. Ready to defend, willing to fight, but always choosing peace first. Former Velkari citizens, those who had survived the war, found places in the new order. Many of them had never wanted the Empire. They had been trapped by their own government's ambitions. The Coalition gave them a chance to start over. On Velkaris Prime, now a member world of the Coalition, a monument stood where Vraxis's command ship had fallen. The inscription read simply, "Here ended an empire. Here began an alliance." Admiral Blake gave his final speech before retiring completely. He was 73, tired and ready to rest. But first he had words for the Coalition's newest graduates. "You were born into a free galaxy," he told them. "You didn't see the Empire. You didn't know what it was like to live in fear. That's good. That means we succeeded. But never forget what it cost." He paused, looking at the young faces before him. "Your parents and grandparents fought a war so you wouldn't have to. They faced an enemy that outnumbered and outgunned them. They fought anyway. Not because they were fearless, but because they understood something important. Some things are worth fighting for. Freedom is one of them. The galaxy we gave you isn't perfect. There are still threats, still challenges. But you face them from a position of strength. Not military strength, though we have that. Strength that comes from unity, from different species working together, from choosing cooperation over domination. The Velkari thought the galaxy belonged to the strong. We proved them wrong. The galaxy belongs to those who are willing to stand up for what's right, to those who refuse to surrender their principles, to those who understand that real power comes from protecting the weak, not exploiting them." Blake looked at the Coalition flag, with its symbol of multiple hands joined together. "We were underestimated. We were mocked. They laughed at us and told us to surrender. But we showed them something they never expected. We showed them that humanity, and all free peoples, have a strength that can't be measured in ships or weapons, the strength of determination, of hope, of refusing to accept defeat." The sky turned red that day above Earth, red from burning enemy ships. Red from the price of freedom. That red sky became a symbol across the galaxy, a reminder that empires fall when they forget that every species, no matter how small or how new, deserves respect. So go forward into this galaxy we built for you. Explore it, improve it, protect it, and never forget the lesson we learned. Laughter stops when you underestimate those who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Blake stepped down from the podium to thunderous applause. He had said what needed to be said. Years later, historians would write about the war. They would analyze the battles, study the tactics, debate the decisions. But they all agreed on one thing. The moment the Velkari laughed at humanity was the moment they lost. Because they didn't understand what they were facing, not a species with the best weapons or the biggest fleet, but a species that refused to be broken, that turned disadvantages into advantages, that stood together even when standing meant dying. And when other species saw humans fight, they remembered how to fight too. The laughter stopped. The empire fell, and the galaxy changed forever. The red sky over Earth that day wasn't just burning debris. It was a message written in fire for every tyrant, every empire, every force that thought might made right. The message was simple. Humanity had arrived and nothing would ever be the same.